Welcome to the Property Couch, where each week you get to listen to two of Australia's leading experts. Bryce Holdaway, co-host of Location Australia on Foxtel's Lifestyle Channel, co-host of Escape from the City on the ABC, and partner of Empower Wealth Advisory. Ben Kingsley, chair of Property Investors Council of Australia and the founder of Empower Wealth Advisory, named the 2018 and 2019 Property Advisory Firm of the Year. Stay tuned as they bring you the insider's guide to property, finance and money management.
All right, folks, welcome back to the Property Couch podcast. Hello, Ben. How are you?
G'day, mate. How you going?
6 years, mate.
Sixth birthday. Mate, I'll put the party shirt on.
Oh, you got your party shirt on. Can you believe?
I mean, no one can see it, of course.
Can you believe we've been around for 6 years?
6 years.
My baby boy turned 8 the other day, and our little podcast turned 6.
Oh, wow.
23rd of February. Today's the 25th. Mate, congratulations.
Happy birthday, mate.
Happy birthday to you too. I'm excited. Happy birthday, Ivis. Thanks for being there for the entire journey as well. Yeah. The Stig, arguably the most important person on the crew here. Yeah. As my dog agrees with that. So, second round.
And again, yeah. A bit beret.
So there you go, folks. We can't believe it's 6 years. It's been enormous fun for us. And for those of you who have been with us for 6 years, thank you. For those of you that haven't been with us for 6 years, only for a little bit, there's plenty of chances to catch up on the 6 years.
For the 6 years, birthday people, we're sorry. Apologies for everything, all the offending we've done.
Yes, exactly. Apologise for all the Collingwood references, way too many. Hey, the party's over at Instagram, by the way, on our 6th birthday. We'll get we'll be over there having fun. So for those people who love to be on Instagram, I know you're always on Instagram, aren't you, Ben?
Yeah. Yep. No, you know that's...
You need me to explain what Instagram is?
I know that Facebook own it. That's all I know.
True. Paid $1 billion for it. It's probably worth $50 billion now. So there we go. Come and hang out on the Property Couch over on the gram for all the grammars. That'll be fun.
Awesome. And also to Emma and to Art, thank you very much also for being an important part of the crew who put this show together each week. Very cool.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the Tagby audiobook is on Audible.
Well, Tagby, what does that stand for, Bryce?
Well, if you'd been around for 6 years, Ben, you'd know it stands for The Armchair Guide to Property Investing. So that book is over on Audible. So if you want to go and download it at a more expensive price than you can get by going to thearmchairguide.com.au, you can go and get it on Audible.
But get it for free from us or pay for it.
No. You can get the book book for free, and you can get the audio book for $9.95. You can upgrade to get the audio book as well.
Nice.
So it's pretty good. Most audio books are around $30, Ben. So, so there you go, folks. If you're an Audible crew, and I'm on Audible, Ben. I
love it.
Can you say you read books anymore, or do you just say you listen to books? Like, is there any sort of? I don't read books anymore. I just listen.
I do a mix, but I'm far more audio these days.
Yeah, 1.8 speed. Like I read at 0.5 speed, and
well, if you're 0.5, I'm 0.2.
Whereas I can listen at 1.8. So there you go. Hey, we're going to get our third part of our series on how to navigate a hot market. Super excited about launching into this.
Yeah.
And we've received some really great feedback. So thank you to those people who have given us the feedback. Hopefully it's helped you navigate this crazy market that's smoking all over the country. So I will quickly get into my mindset minute. We're on the home stretch, part 4, Ben, chapter 22. If you must find fault, this is the way to begin. It's always easier to listen to unpleasant things after we've heard some praise of our good points. A barber lathers a man before he shaves him. So as I say every week, Ben, the gold is in the example. So I'm going to read one example out. Dorothy Rubleski, a branch manager of the Fort Monmouth, New Jersey Federal Credit Union, reported to one of our classes how she was happy to help one of her employees become more productive. We recently hired a young lady as a teller trainee. Her contact with our customers was very good. She was accurate and efficient in handling individual transactions. The problem developed at the end of the day when it was time to balance out. The head teller came to me and strongly suggested that I fire this woman. She is holding up everyone else because she is so slow in balancing out. I've shown her over and over, but she can't get it. She's got to go. The next day, I observed her working quickly and accurately when handling the normal everyday transactions, and she was very pleasant with our customers. It didn't take long to discover why she had trouble balancing out. After the office closed, I went over to talk with her. She was obviously nervous and upset. I praised her for being so friendly and outgoing with the customers and complimented her for the accuracy and speed in that work. I then suggested we review the procedure we use in balancing the cash draw. Once she realized I had confidence in her, she easily followed my suggestions and soon mastered this function. Imagine that. We have had no problems with her since then. Beginning with praise is like the dentist who begins his work with Novocaine, which is local anesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
The patient still gets a drilling, but the Novocaine is pain killing. A leader will use principle 22, Ben, which is begin with praise and honest appreciation. So I thought I'd model this, right? So Ben,
right,
you're clearly a man of distinguished years. You obviously have got intelligence beyond your 50 years. You are a very smart man.
No idea.
You are fun to be around, right? However,
you barrack for Collingwood.
What are you thinking? That club is a rabble. They are just falling apart. They are in free fall.
Scott's going to lead us again this year.
Half of the
Darcy
ladder.
Moore's just joined the leadership group. Onwards and upwards.
So there you go. How'd I go? I modelled it, Ben. I modelled it. Was that all right? Was that like Novocaine?
Oh, it landed well. That was nice praise. Thank you, Bryce.
There you go. So folks, begin with praise and honest appreciation. So that is the challenge for this week. All right, let's hook in. Everything you need to know about buying in a hot market, part 3. Today, we're going to be talking about the offer. We're going to be talking about any conditions, and then we're going to talk about what happens next. So there's a lot to get into there. But just to remind ourselves, what does the hot market actually mean? Well, days on market are short. Competition is super strong, and prices are rising each week. I mean, the crew was telling us a story during the week. I know they shared it with you too, Ben, where there was a property in a suburb here in Melbourne, where the quote was 800 to 860, which of course you'd think new benchmarks, it's probably going to be a higher part of the price range plus.
Yep.
Not only was it plus, it went for 1.206 million. It went 300,000 over reserve. So that is just an indication of, it was presented nicely, it was done up, it had all of the things that we talk about, Ben. It had owner occupier appeal.
It did. I had a look at it.
It had some scarcity. It was investment grade. There was precedent in the area. There was gentrification happening in that suburb. Like tick, 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 tick. So there was no FOMO.
As soon as it came through and I saw the reserve number, I'm like, so for everyone, 10% of the quoting range can be about right? You know, there's, an agent sort of thinking, if I get the top end of the quoting range and it's around 10%, then that's a good result. This is an outstanding result, 30+%, if not more. And so I said, all right, this thing has to have owner occupier appeal. So before I even clicked on, I'm like, as soon as I clicked on, I'm like, oh yeah, character charm, beautifully presented. And the rest is history, right? Emotional buyer went crazy on it.
Crazy. So Ben, can you answer this question? Was it A, investor stock, or B, investment grade?
Well, it's investment grade 100% in terms of
just reinforcing a point. Did you see what I did there?
Yeah. And would an investor be able to buy that one in a market like today? Probably not. I would have thought that that the owner occupiers pushed that one just a little bit above what we would say is fair market value. But today we are going to be talking about how you've got to pay a little bit of tomorrow's price if you want to get into the market with confidence that effectively the market's going to move even higher. And we'll talk about that in the sort of what's making property news section, where I'm going to just have a little bit of a flashback to a previous period where prices were moving, every week very quickly.
They were. All right. So we're going to make an offer. So we've done all the things we've talked about in part 1 and part 2. Yep. We're now at the point where we're going to make an offer. So if we haven't reinforced this point enough, we'll just reinforce it again. It's all about speed, clean terms, right team, and having a savvy broker. So that's really the overarching theme of being in a position to make an offer. But I just want to reinforce a point here that it's about, I kind of was hinting at it with that property we just talked, quality assets versus FOMO decisions, right? So the tide is in. I've said that for a couple of weeks. So no one knows who has a swimming cosy on at the moment. No one knows who's got the birthday suit on. Everyone looks the same. So that's the overarching principle. So before we start talking about putting offers in, just want to reinforce that don't buy FOMO related. Don't make a FOMO related mistake. It's tough. It's a tough environment, but you don't want to compromise just to get in. The game, the game. We're going to talk about the game is actually to get into the market shortly, but the bigger game is the war is to get a quality asset that'll serve your family, your financial peace over time. The battle is to get in, but the war is to make sure they're the right assets. So I just wanted to remind folks that don't make FOMO shortcuts that you'll regret down the track when this heat comes out. The heat will come out. You'd think that the authorities would be wanting to take the heat out of the market if it starts running away. We don't like to see property bubbles, but it is a recession-busting market that will allow us to punch our way out of a COVID-related recession, which is why they will let it run for a short period of time, probably 18 months or so.
Yeah, 12 to 18 months, and I suspect we'll start to see, depending on how quickly it runs, we'll start to see some type of macro.
They'll drop the hammer. They'll lift the handbrake.
Yep.
Mark our words. APRA will be coming back into the game in the future to take some of the sting out of it. But for the foreseeable future, this is what we're navigating, right? So everyone, let's get outside and instead of dancing for rain, let's dance for listings, right? Because that'll actually take some heat out if there's a bit more stock. But there's self-fulfilling prophecies here. People aren't selling before they buy something, and therefore because they're not selling, they can't get to buy before, and it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of not enough stock.
Can I just make a quick point on that in terms of future price forecasting here, Bryce? When we've seen the macro-prudential force in the market, we did see property prices return. So, from the peaks of late 2017, we did see property prices retract a little bit. What's different about this one is historically low interest rates. So we still have a reserve board who's saying next 3 years, pretty much lock in, zero change in interest rates. Now, whether that plays out is another question. But even if the macro-prudential regulation comes in there, this one is very much owner-occupied led. It hasn't been investor-led. Now, investors are coming back, make no mistake about that. So it is a really, you've got first home buyers, upgraders and downsizers, and also, the investors in the market. So I don't think the correction will be as much as what we saw, in terms of irrational buying behavior, because it is underpinned by these low interest rates. So that is just something to be aware of. If people are sort of saying, oh, that's great, I'll wait 18 months and I'll be able to buy for the same price as today, I'm not sure that's going to be the case.
Well, in 18 months, the planes will be landing, Ben. So there'll be more demand here. So they'll turn up and more people will want to buy a house. So, so there you go, folks. So just a couple of little things to set the scene here for what we're talking about. Now, I'm talking largely anecdotally around chatting with the team about what they're buying, and we're buying across the country, right? So we're buying in multiple markets. We're not talking about being in just in inner west of Melbourne or the North Shore of Sydney or whatever. We're buying across multiple sub markets across multiple markets. So here's one of the anecdotes, right? You may need to make a decision about whether you're going to buy the property before the open. So what do you mean? Well, we're buying stuff that we see our offer is being put in within an hour or two after the open. So, and normally we would be able to ring the agent and say, hey, can you sneak us through on Thursday afternoon? They're like, sorry, see you on Saturday, right? So we're doing all the prep, all the due diligence, all the conversations with the clients. Everything is getting ready before the open. So none of this, we'll go and check it out. Then we'll give you a call and then we'll do DD afterwards and we'll talk about it. And we might consider putting it off. No, we're actually bringing everything forward. So folks, let that land. If you want to be in the game, you're up against buyers who are making decisions within an hour or two of the open finishing. Are you in a position where you can do that? Are you in the headspace to actually do that? Are you thinking you're going to go to a few opens on the Saturday, go out for brunch on Sunday morning, discuss them, think about what you're going to do on Monday, maybe put an offer in that week? No, you got to be prepared to if you're not putting an offer in after the open on the Saturday, probably on the Sunday. So this is where we're at. So so when you're in opens and you're not prepared to do that, maybe the discussion that you're having with the agent is, what else have you got coming up? What are you about to list? What else can I do? Because if you're not in that headspace and you're not ready, you're not going to get it. You're not on very, very competitive properties. You're not going to get it.
Bryce, we do have the luxury, obviously, of having time during the week, because that's what we do as our day job, right? And those open for inspections are basically where we just check blind spots. We're able to do our DD heavily before that first open, so we can action. So for those of you who are doing it yourself, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to do the DD. You're going to have to learn how to do DD using all of the tools that are available out there, from land government sites to which you can check easements and all of the type of construction, land sizes. You can obviously go to the sales portals and the the sold area and also the buying area. You're just going to have to do a lot of after-hour work. So when you are getting to the property itself, you are just checking blind spots yourself, because you will be called by the agent effectively within 24 hours of that open to see whether you want to put an offer in. And this is what we're trying to highlight to you in terms of why those ducks need to be lined up.
Agents are doing things differently too in this market. Not all of them, but if you've got 9 offers, that's probably enough. If you're an agent, if you think about it, like if we get 9 offers, I don't need to hang around for the other 12. Maybe there could be 13 offers. So thinking that the agent might give you a call to say, hey, look, I've got an acceptable offer. That's, an offer that's acceptable to the vendor. Do you want to put, if they've got already 9 banked up, they might not call you.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that's going to happen everywhere. And I was talking largely about non-auction markets too, because you've got an auction campaign. We're going to talk about what happens with an auction campaign shortly, but in Brisbane or Adelaide, for example, that's when you've got to do the deal after the open. But these are the things that happen in a hot market. Ben, I went for I've used this analogy right throughout this 3-part series. I'm going to reinforce it again. I went for a ride last night with a mate of mine. We go up to just beyond Bells Beach down towards Point Addis. And the surf was, as you go through Bells, you've been to Bells much, Ben?
Yep.
Big, thick, strong swells come through. The waves are enormous, right? Last night, the swells coming through, and it. I'm just an amateur surfer, mate. I'm a hack. I enjoy it, but mate, I wouldn't paddle out of Bells. No way.
No.
Not only would I not paddle out of Bells because of the size of the waves. I mean, have you dealt with the surfers that are out there when you accidentally get in front of their waves? I mean, so again, I'm using that analogy. It's being in the big surf. So if you're not prepared to paddle out in there, you better go back and play in the shore breaks, or wait, or get some help. Because it is really challenging. So be aware that things are moving unusually in this market. Not all agents are. Some agents will get every single offer that is available, squeeze it out, get them competitive. But in some cases, they might just go, I've got enough to create the competitive tension that I'm after.
So Bryce, the number one thing that everyone out there who's listening and who's in our community will want to know is, how do I set a price? What's the best way for me to actually work out what my offer is going to be and my stretch? What's that? The last offer I'm going to put there before I walk away. How do I do that?
Yeah, there's a bit to this, right? Because if you think about that 800 to 860, how do you price that at 1.206, Ben? And what about the person who was at 1.205 who missed it? Like, were they pricing it at 1.205 when they did it? So we talk about having 3 prices. Where you'd hope it would go is the first price in a normal market. The next price is where you think it's under a bit of competition, and then the third price is a stretch price where in certain conditions that's where you've got to go, and it's kind of a little bit uncomfortable, but okay, right? Because you everything else stacks up. Well, we're well and truly on that third tier and somewhere beyond, right? So you say, how do you price it? Well, normally I'd say go and see what the comparable sales are. Go back as far as 6 months and get. Well, 6 months is way too long. Think about during the pandemic last year, we didn't use any results during March or April because they were fully fear-fueled prices. We picked up some amazing price properties at that point. But again, if you think about it now, December is too far back, and even parts of January is too far back. So I'm not going to pretend that it's easy at the minute. And the science and the art colliding here is, to be honest, it's an experience thing.
Well, the other challenge there is when people go and have a look at sold properties in the locality, some of that is delayed information, right? So the only way in a fast-moving market that you can get some idea is to actually ring around to the selling agents and form some type of relationship with them where they will say, actually, last weekend, this property went for this. Now, there are some sites that will publish the auction results from the previous weekend. That is a must go to. You absolutely, if you want to get an idea, you want to be reeling through the sales for February so far and start to study those properties. Start to look at land to asset ratio. Start to look at, what you got for your money. Was it all property, or was it a portion of land, or was it a nice combination of the two? Did it have owner occupier appeal, or was it a renovator's delight? That's the only way you're going to do, and it is going to take you probably 2 or 3 months to get an idea of, to be accurate within, say, 5 or 10% of what the property is going to go for in a moving market, and be prepared that you're going to go to these properties sometimes and just see it, just run and go, that just didn't make sense to me. It still sometimes for us doesn't make sense to us in terms of what some properties sell for. But if you get a passionate or 2 passionate owner-occupied buyers who are willing to run it to the hill, that's what's going to happen. But that's the only way, because if you're looking at old data, as Bryce was saying, those comparative sales are difficult. And if you're buying in an area where you can have the time to spend and build relationships with those agents, you're going to get some of that intel and feedback as well.
Key word you just said then was the relationships with the agents. And I guess when you're a professional buyer, you can pick up the phone and talk to an agent and say, hey, look, were you in the lounge room of that listing that you missed? And yep. What was some of the discussions going on with the vendor? Well, they were a bit unrealistic, or they were really realistic, or they wanted. So backstory and intel is so incredibly critical at this point to be able to understand. And talking to another agent when they're friendly also gets you a bit more realistic about where it's at, because they've got nothing in it. They've lost the listing. Someone else might have got it. So they, based on the relationship of doing many deals over time, that's where we get a bit of luxury around that. But your question was, how do we price it? Well, I'm saying it's difficult, but what you would do is go to the sold tab and have a look to see what's recently sold, and as recent as you possibly can. Build relationships with agents, and that's not an overnight thing. So have a think about, if you want to buy in a hot market, whether you think I'm buying in May or June. Now is the time to develop relationships and get in there. And also be realistic about how you set your upper limit, because the comps may or may not help. Quote ranges may or may not help, but you need to give yourself a chance to be in it, but also back it up with some data as well. So pricing is challenging.
Yeah, and expect in the more established auction markets that even in the middle and outer ring suburbs at the moment, they're crazy not taking these properties to auction as well, unless they get, as you say, that really amazing offer straight after their first open or second open. They've got multiple buyers. It's best to strike when the iron's hot in that particular state, where you get basically your highest and best offer. So, which we'll talk about in a minute. So let's make sure we've got all of our ducks lined up. And how do we move fast, Bryce?
Well, builder has to be on standby. So I'll give you an example of what we're doing with our team. We're ringing the builder and saying, what slots have you got available?
The building inspector?
Yep. Building inspector, yeah.
Yep.
So what slots have you got available? Because their diaries are getting full too, remember? In a hot market, they're busy. Yep. So, and they'll give us, these slots are available. So we're front footing that, so that when we're preparing, we're getting advance on that. So have your builder on standby. Oh my goodness, you've got to have the contract reviewed the instant that you are on a property that you like and it's available. And in some cases, just remember that all contracts, we're assuming they're all full and ready, but there might be missing pieces and things that you need to, and there might be red flags. We talked about that.
You're getting on the search portals and you're requesting the contract of sale prior to the open.
Yep.
That's a must. Yep.
Yep. And because in Melbourne and Sydney, you're used to just doing the DD in advance, but in some of these other markets, Perth and Adelaide and Brisbane, you quite often you're doing the DD afterwards. I mean, in Adelaide, you get a 2-day cooling off period without penalty, so you're normally doing it in that 48-hour window.
Yep.
Now you got to be prepared to change the game and get that done earlier.
Yep.
So yes. So also just be aware that when you get a contract reviewed, there are some nice to haves. So we might send a contract off to a solicitor or a conveyancer, and they'll come back with a 2-page report, which is really great. Here's all the red flags, but they have a list of nice to haves. I'd love you to delete this clause, which might be that you've got to have 9 bank checks available or just something, right?
Yeah, well, penalty interest is a good one that they try and go after where, they want a little bit of a higher rate or something like that, which is a little bit, overs. Yep.
Yeah. But a contract is prepared by the vendor's solicitor, the seller's solicitor, and they act in the best interest of the seller, right? So what we've got to do is put the conditions, the solicitor flags in the critical, important, and nice to have category, because we don't want to get stuck on nice to haves, because you might get a list of 7 or 8 items where the solicitor says, "Can you get that deleted?" No, you won't get those deleted. You don't ignore major red flags. Let's be super, super clear. You take your solicitor's advice. I'm not pretending that you wouldn't, right? But what I'm saying is
structural permits, everything in order.
Anything that's going to cost you a lot of money. They're specialists. Take their advice. So for the avoidance of doubt, I'm not saying to not take their advice. But what I am saying over doing this over 20 years, some of them are they're doing their job by protecting the buyer by saying, if you can get rid of this one, if you can get rid of this one, if you can get rid of this one, if you can get rid of this one. But just be mindful, in the best of markets, that's difficult, let alone a hot market. So so that's why I'm saying critical, important, nice to do. And I'm not discrediting the professionals. I just want to be really clear here, Ben. I'm just saying, if you want to get in the game, we've got to move a little bit up the risk spectrum.
Let me tell you a quick funny story. Back in my mortgage days, years and years and years ago, I got a contract from the bank. The mortgage contract went to the customer, and obviously the bank says, go and get some independent legal advice. So they went and got some independent legal advice on the mortgage contract.
Oh gosh.
Let's come back,
banks.
strike this out, strike this out, strike this out. I'm like, thank you. Good on you for getting your independent legal advice so you know your rights and your obligations. A bank's not going to accept any changes to their mortgage contract. So they're going to lend you the money or not. So this is what we're trying to allude to, in the sense that, unfortunately, the power is in the vendor's hands here. So you don't want to lose a deal based on, what we would call nice to have terms trying to be struck out of the contract. It just makes the transaction harder.
Yeah.
So, good point, Bryce.
Ben, when I first got my first contract at Foxtel, Series 1, relocation back in the day. I think that was 2011. That's 10 years. I got the contract, and then of course the advice was to go and get some advice. So I paid for a solicitor. They've gone through the contract, and they came back with 10 pieces of change to the contract, and I've gone, cool, no worries. I've returned the contract back. And then they've gone, of those 10 concessions you've asked for, this is how many we're going to give you. 0, none. Take it or leave it. Mate, you've got 0 leverage here, buddy. You're like, they didn't say this, but you're a nobody. And if you don't take the gig, we'll give it to someone else. But my solicitor was doing the right thing by saying, you've got to get rid of this, you've got to get rid of this, you've got to change this, right? So we tell these anecdotes by saying, I'm going to reinforce this point, Ben, because I do not want to be on record anyone saying Bryce said. You do take the advice of the solicitor and conveyancer. Whatever advice they give you supersedes anything that I'm saying right now, and I do not pretend to be a legal specialist. What I am saying, critical, important, nice to haves. That's all I want you to do.
So that's what you want to be asking your lawyer when they go through a contract and they say these things, like, what are the showstoppers? What are the things that will cost me tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or, that the property is not actually legitimately available for sale, and I'm going to, the deposit goes into the abyss. All of those things are what we call critical things. So that's the question to your solicitor or lawyer is, what are the must go showstoppers, and then the others, if you can get them, but be more flexible on those conditions that may not affect you if you're going to settle on time or whatever it is that's going to play out.
Is this the bit where Ivis now cuts in our disclaimer, Ben? All advice. This is just general information, not intended to be advice.
All right, and then you've got another point here about being prepared.
Yeah. Your itinerary is going to be thrown around. Like you're on Thursday and you've got four opens that you got lined up, and all of a sudden the agent brought forward an auction, or so just your itinerary is not going to be, your diary is not going to be perfect. Stuff's going to happen. You're going to be doing stuff on Sunday. So, and
you are going to be working Sundays if you're going to try and do this yourself. So correct. Just be mindful. This is a 24/7 job until you secure that property.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a heap of DD. And if you cut corners, buyer beware, caveat emptor, buyer beware.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know we're sounding a little bit fearful here, Ben, for poor people who are not experienced at this game, but we're trying to prepare people for the realities of what you're experiencing, right? So, there's no agenda other than to say that there is urgency, there is an acute focus that needs to be put on it, and if you want to get in the game and you want to buy now, these are the things that you need to be considering. Not all markets. Not all markets. Some sub segments will be you'll be saying this doesn't apply to me. Cool, no problem.
So what's the clue? The first open you go to, and there's a queue.
Yeah.
Or there's 20 people or more going through it. You absolutely know. You have to sharpen up, and you're playing in the big surf. So that's who we're talking to now. And with interest rates where they've never been before, and we're seeing it happening right across Australia.
And the other X factor in Melbourne is that there's no certainty, Ben. Like none of us knew we were going to have a snap lockdown for 5 days, right? So and we've got no confidence that might not happen again.
Don't start me on that. Let's move on.
Well, I'm not trying to get political. I'm just saying
I know.
It impacts. Like all of a sudden you're turning up at an auction, you're planning to turn up at an auction on the Saturday, and then all of a sudden that all gets brought forward because you've got no auctions on Saturday anymore, or you're doing it on Zoom, or you're doing it online. So there's a bit going on. So offers prior to auction.
Yeah.
So I kind of hinted that. Be ready for campaigns to be brought forward at any moment, right? So and be prepared that there's plenty of buyers for the agent to be excited about. So you may or may not get a call. Yeah. These agents crave certainty too, particularly in Melbourne, but everywhere they want some certainty too. And buyers are willing to make strong offers early. So an agent might think, well, someone's taken a big swing here. This might be the best offer I get. Therefore, I'm not going to run the campaign through. I'm going to actually let it go. I'm actually going to bring it forward. So these are some of the things that are going on. And BAs can't actually help you. I'm just talking a bit about our whole industry. Some people might not want me to speak on their behalf, but I guess the point is, if someone wanted a property this Saturday and they rang a BA on a Thursday, can you help me out?
A buyer's agent for those.
A buyer's agent, yeah.
Yep.
Can you help me out do the negotiation? A buyer's agent would go, oh, okay, there's a bit to do here, but we could probably get it done. But don't even think about being able to just ring a buyer's agent on a Thursday now and say, can you help me for a property that's just come up and they've moved the campaign forward? Because the buyer's agents need more time. Yep. They need more time than that. So just flagging that for those who do have an appetite for professional help, give as much notice as you can. That's really, really important.
And I suspect you might even have to join a little bit of a waiting queue, because a buyer's agent, if they've got full briefs, which is start to finish, which is fine, negotiate and buy, that, they're only humans too, and there's only a certain number of hours in the day. So if they're looking after a dozen clients as it is, then, but the benefit of that is that they are in the field and they absolutely are sharp on price, sharp on expectations, sharp on negotiation. So that's the trade-off. You might be put into a bit of a queue, and your time will come, but as opposed to doing it yourself and being overwhelmed or scared off is the trade-off.
Boardroom auctions, Ben.
Yes.
Mate, everyone's seen on telly what the standard auction is, but boardroom auctions aren't as well known, and so therefore the unknown creates uncertainty, and the uncertainty really creates a bit of anxiety. But basically, it could take a whole range, right? So I've been in boardroom auctions where we've all been called forward. It's a Thursday night. The auction was meant to be that Saturday. Someone puts in an offer that's acceptable to the vendor. They make that known, and then all of a sudden it just becomes an exercise of let's do it. We're going to wrap it up. And then they want to keep that competitive tension, just bring the date forward. So I've been in ones where they've had all the buyers in the office. It's like 8 o'clock at night. One person's in, one buying group is in separate offices, and they're not visible to each other. And then they just pass the book around and say, let us know if you're staying in. And they just cut laps and cut circles until everyone pulls out and there's one person standing there. So that's one way that you'll see it. Yep. Another one is you're packed into a tight little boardroom where everyone is nervous. The energy, like you can feel ice running through your veins, and people, non-professional buyers find that very, very intimidating. Yep. And so you might find yourself in this scenario. And so you need to be aware of what it looks like, what the rules of the game are. But ultimately, it's been called because there's been an offer that's acceptable. They will take that offer unless the competitive bidding pushes it up. And then you're basically into an auction scenario again. So, and you may have to drop everything. You may be thinking, auction this Saturday, I've got everything organised, babysitters, I'm happy to turn up. And then you get a call from the agent. It's happening tonight at 7 o'clock. And you have to drive across town to be in my boardroom so that you can be a competitor, or you need to be on the phone, or you might need to be on Zoom. So these are some of the things that are going on that you need to be thinking about. And then the last thing to just remind folks here is the auctioneer calls the shots with the increments. I've been a smart ass once or twice in an auction that's backfired on me, Ben. So I've made sure I've got a very deliberate strategy at auction. But I play as close as I can to the line of being able to control the auction from the point of view of bringing the advantage back to me as the buyer. But never, ever do I lose sight of the fact that the auctioneer is in control of that. And if I annoy them, they're going to do whatever it takes for me not to buy it. So just being mindful that the auctioneer calls the shot with increments. So your art is to slow it down and make them as small as possible. Their art is to speed it up and make them as large as possible. So just be aware of that competitive tension, but do not step on that person's ego. That will bite you in the bum. So I've seen a lot of people be tool bags at auctions. It's not a strategy I reckon you should do.
No, and we've talked about auction strategies and all that before in previous podcasts over the 6 years. And we encourage you to go to the propertycouch.com.au and just search for auction, auction negotiations, auction bidding, those type of things. There's several podcasts that we've done on that before, because one, we'll talk about body language and those other things. But Bryce, the new one, the COVID new norm is Zoom auctions. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I love them. I think, well, it could be Zoom, could be any of the online platforms, but again, it creates uncertainty for people who what's going on? Where's that bid come from? But I guess what I do want to say about Zoom is you got to bring your game. Like, do you know when you're at an auction, Ben, and you've bid at plenty of auctions, so you're bidding, you've positioned yourself correctly, but sometimes there's the person who's bidding and you have to look around the corner and who is it, and you can't see their body language and who they are. And on Zoom, you don't even have to move your head. You just got to move your eyes. You can see, and then they put it on mute, and you can see them talking between themselves. And so it's important that we're aware that body language is still important, and it's probably more important in that environment. So whatever environment you find yourself in online, because it's now the new norm, just be aware that a little bit of prep. Got to be confident. You got to know what you're looking for. You got to see the body language signals that the other person's reached their upper limit. All of that stuff matters to help you put yourself in the box seat.
Now, Bryce, just as we close out on the auction side, I want to just make a point that we've traditionally talked about how most vendors would let their property go to an auction and do the 4 to 6 week campaign to get that result, to build that tension and to find new buyers coming in. When you have 8 or 9 or 10 new buyers coming in, the agent's going to be talking to the vendor, because one of the things you've always got to remember that the vendor is going to be a buyer again. So if they're looking to upsize or downsize, so if it's an owner-occupied property, they have to buy again. So the idea from the selling agent's point of view is say, look, I've got 12 offers that I'm expecting to come in the first 36 hours of the open. We need to move on this, because I need to get you back in looking for your next property, because the market's moving so quickly. So historically, we've said, there are buyers markets. This one is at the height of the 2001 to 2003 market that I've experienced before. So from that point of view, just be mindful of that. That's why we've said in the past, they won't sell prior to auction. at the moment they are considering it based on the circumstances of the vendor in terms of if they have to get back in and they're looking to upsize, that's going to be a problem for them if the market's moving.
Yeah, the agent wants to keep their big fish. So the big fish who is most likely to buy it could find another property because they know that the listings are tight and they might miss out on the day. And if they get more certainty somewhere else, they'll go. So there's a lot of stuff going on here, right? So, hey, the game is actually just securing the property, by the way. So the game is to get it. And sometimes to get the property, there's some gamesmanship that you need to do that. So you've got to do whatever it takes to get it off the market within reason. But a professional buyer knows how to get it off the market in a way that still allows them to get what they want once they've got it off the market. And I'm that's not for the faint-hearted, by the way. That's a professional tactic. But the goal, just reminding everyone, the goal is actually to secure it, scare off some of the competition, have some clear air. So let's not lose sight of what the game is here. You could remind an agent that you are the backup if a sale falls through. Ben, you've got an anecdote around this.
Yeah, I did. So as I promised everyone last year, I said it was a great time to be buying in the middle of a pandemic. So I bought 1.5 properties during that time. One of the properties I bought was in Queensland. And I used obviously Nicole and our buyers agency team who did an amazing job as usual, Nick. She is a jet. So she identified this property. I thought it was everything that I wanted in terms of allowing us to add value to it down the track. And we were the underbidder. And we were only, I think we were 20 grand off. We were in, sort of the 6-figure range, but we were 20 grand off. So it wasn't
7 figures.
Number. 7 figures, sorry, my bad, 7 figures. It wasn't a big number. And so we just, to Nicole's credit, we just kept on it. And we were like, they had some conditions. We didn't. We were a cash offer, as we talk about. They just stumbled. And the agent got a little bit frustrated. And so we just tweaked our offer a little bit to not only match theirs, but just give a little extra 5 grand on top. And all of a sudden it fell our way. And now I look back at that, I think we settled at the end of the year on that one. That one is, it's got so much upside in terms of what we can do with that particular asset. So it's a ripper. So, if it wasn't for us, staying in the conversation because we knew the other party had terms and conditions, their offer wasn't a cash offer. They just offered more that we ended up getting it.
Right. The bridesmaid got the chocolates in the end.
Yeah,
eh?
we did.
So that's the reinforcing point here, folks. If you miss it, it might not be the end of the story. It might not be the end of the story. So you just remind the agent that you're a backup if they need it, because everyone else has gone off to play elsewhere and look at the next and deal with the disappointment and all that sort of stuff. But if you're the person that's still hanging around, reminding them that could put you in a leveraged position like it did for you, Ben. So some techniques that you use to buy property are to secure it, scare off the competition, and then renegotiate later. So again, I can't share that in a soundbite here. That takes some experience to do, but that if you do know someone who can help you with that, that's where the game is. The game is securing the property. And of course, formal versus informal, you got to make formal offers. It's got to be in writing, deposits attached. Like informal verbals aren't enough. You got to get it done. You got to get it done, show them that you're serious. And then the last thing I want to talk about is putting the offer in is around highest and best. You're going to get a lot of that. Okay. Highest and best by 7:00 tonight, whenever the deadline is. And so you need to know a lot about your competition. And part of doing that is you've got to ask a lot of questions. But part of that is calling the agent just before the deadline, maybe 30 minutes before. How many building inspections have been done? They might not answer it, but see if they will. 3 have been done. And how many offers are in? They may not answer it again, but at least you know where the competition is, because the next part is, what's your walkaway price? Well, knowing some of this backstory and this intel will help you to know what your walkaway price is, because in some cases it will be a premium. It might be a price that hasn't been achieved before that you've looked at through your comps, but you need to be able to assess if you're comfortable at that level. And one of the particularly if you're an owner occupier, more so if you're an owner occupier for this one, but Veronica and I used to talk on the show when we were talking with the clients on the show, and it really comes down to there's usually a couple of prices that you'll pay. The one that you want to pay, and the one that you would have paid. If I missed it, I would have gone a bit further. I would have paid. Well, now's the time to pay. Like, don't leave any in the gun, right?
Yeah.
So the question you ask yourself is, at what price would I be prepared to pay where legitimately, if someone pays $1 more, they can have it? I'm just not there. $1 more, they can have it. That's the conversation point that you need to have so that you don't have any regret. I gave it my best shot. If you're lost giving it your best shot, that's okay. We've all done that. But if you've ever lost it with some still in the bank, that's a feeling of regret that's really, really gnaws at you.
Can I pick up on the 30-minute deadline, highest and best? There's a couple of points I want to make here that, for the beginners to help them out. Bryce mentioned earlier, relationships are key. If you've been rude or whatever to an agent, they're probably going to tell you, no, I'm not letting you know how many building and pest inspections done, not how many offers are in. If you've been able to build some rapport with them, they still might, in the first instance, say, look, I'm not going to give that information away. You've got two responses here. The first response is around saying, hey, look, I'm not asking what they're paying. But in terms of if I know that there's been 7 offers in there, that is going to influence my price. And if you want to get the best price for the vendor, having an understanding of those offers that are in will give me an idea and a gauge on that. So all of a sudden you've turned it around in the favor of the selling agent to go, actually, there is no harm in me giving that away. And that's the second point. Identify with them to sort of say, I'm not asking what they're offering. Of course, you're never going to disclose that to me. But ultimately what I am saying is there's two things here. One is if you give me an idea of the interest in the property, that's going to potentially influence my highest and best. And that's just the way in which you have to play. So then you're making them sound like they're doing the best interest to the vendor, giving them a reason why they would give you that number of whether it be inspections or offers that have already been submitted. And that helps you in terms of forming your highest and best. And as Bryce was just saying, what that stretch price was, that price you'll pay if you didn't get it.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, Ben, this is a reality. Professional buyers often do get to know where the offers are.
Yeah, I know. I look, that's good.
And that was not to discredit you, right?
No, I understand that.
I'm just trying to reinforce that it's not a fair playing field. It's not.
No, it isn't.
We often get an agent say, well, I'll put your offer in, and I'll actually give you some guidance on where it actually finally sits to see if you want to be there, and we can make a decision if we want to be there or not. But that is
a fair playing field, and the reason for that is Bryce is right. I mean, when I mentioned that they're not going to do it for you, because I'm talking to those people who are doing it themselves. But if you turn around, if you've bought 25 properties off that agent over time, they are going to you're going to have a stronger relationship. It's just
the reality. You bought 25 properties. They all settled. They all went smoothly. You didn't muck around. You said what you were going to do. The agent equally did what they said they were going to do. You just form this relationship, this bond over time, where it's like
it isn't right, but that's the way it goes.
And they're out there slogging it out for the best for their client, which is the vendor, and we're out slogging it for the best for our client, which is the buyer. So, but there are these little professional courtesies that you get that happens from what you just described. But so I was actually just creating a footnote. What you said was absolutely true. I was just creating a bit of a footnote so that people do know it's kind of not a level playing field. All right. So you put this offer in, you put in any conditions. What I do want to say is minimal, if any, but in this market, for some people, you just got to put conditions in, right? So, in some cases you will, right? But if you're going to put a building and pest in, don't put standard building and pest in 7 or 14, put 3 days. Or if you can get your builder to commit to 48 hours, do it for 48 hours. Because if you can provide as much certainty as you can, and it's not going to drag out and the campaign's going to get closed out and you're still competitive, short as you can. Maybe subject to valuation, not subject to finance. So finance is all locked. I am locked. I am fully approved. I just got to make sure that it's that Val comes in, right? Maybe make it subject to Val, but be a little bit creative. Shorter the conditions, the less onerous the conditions. Ideally, no conditions, but in some cases that is not.
Especially if you can get it done inside the cooling off period. That's even better, right? So it's really not a condition because you've lined up your ducks and you can get it done inside that cooling off period.
This is another place where it's not a level playing field, Ben, because in Victoria there is a penalty to cool off.
Yes.
but very rarely do we get charged a penalty.
Yeah.
But there is a penalty in
There is.
Adelaide. In Adelaide, there's no penalty. It's actually a tactic over there.
Yeah.
In Brisbane, so it's different, right? But here's a point that I really want to land. At the moment, there is tension between finance and buying. So what do I mean by that? And first of all, I want to say both need to be respected. The buyers need to, if the aim of the game is to get you in the market, we need to respect that what the tactics that the buyers need to employ just to get in the market are aggressive. But then on the other side, you've got the finance people who have to actually make sure that you can settle. And so there's this competitive tension, and both need to be respected and both need to be served. But what we need to do is make sure that we are not being conservative versus legitimate. So what do I mean by that? If you're dealing with a I'll just use mortgage brokers. It could be a bank. So this is a finance person. You're dealing with a finance person, and they say, I'd prefer you to have a finance clause in it. The question is that comes back and says, is that a preference or is that a necessity? Because if it's a preference, not a necessity, what you're actually doing is saying to me that I can't play in some of the competitive markets. I can't play in the Sydney market. I can't play in the Melbourne market. I can't play in the suburbs where getting a finance clause is not possible, or very unlikely. So then the person can come back and say, well, no, I do want you to play in those markets. Okay, well, this is what I need to be able to play in those markets. Can we meet somewhere in the middle here? Because I want to stress that there are finance professionals all over this country who are doing an amazing job, and it's their job to protect their client, right? So, and I want them, on behalf of all of them, I want to speak for them that they're doing a great job.
Legal responsibility under, responsible lending and best interest duty. That's right.
But we're trying to highlight to everyone what it's like being on the buyer's side as well. Yeah. So this competitive tension is real. It needs to be respected on both sides, but we need to realize that we are going to need to move up the risk spectrum to be in this market. So let that land. We're going to have to move. In some cases, we're going to have to move up the risk spectrum.
And so how do you address that with your broker? You say something like, what is your comfort level if I buy at this price point? And they might say, my comfort level is really good. Really good. But what about if I buy at this price point? Well, now we're starting to get in a risk of loan to value ratios and our lenders' mortgage insurances, and we might have to shop around to different lenders. So you're probably going to have a very detailed conversation with your investment savvy mortgage broker around the pros and cons of the different buying ranges. And that's got to be fed back into the decision that you make if you're doing it yourself, or if you're using a professional buyer's agent. That's that competitive tension that Bryce was talking about. And it's respectful because everyone wants the same outcome, which is you to get a property that meets the brief. So, but it is, it's difficult out there. And we know also from a lender's point of view, some lenders are taking 25 days to do a pre-approval assessment. Yeah. Now, you're not in the game. If you haven't done that homework now, you're a buyer in probably April. By the time you get around to pulling everything together. So it's important. Don't start looking for property yet. Don't start looking for property yet, because you're only going to get frustrated. Yeah. Start doing all of your paperwork and getting your house in order to be ready to buy in the next few months.
We're seeing it in our own business, aren't we, Ben? Where our mortgage broking team is under the gun, under the pump, making sure that they do everything that's responsible and legitimate to protect the client. And then our buyer's agency team are doing everything that they can responsibly and legitimately get the client into the market. So there's robust discussion. So this is not theory. We're seeing it every day. It's robust, right?
Never before.
And so the point is that there is respect on both sides for what they're dealing with. Like you said, Ben, on the finance side, some files not being picked up for 25 days. On the buyer side, don't put in a condition, no condition offer. We're going to be laughed out of town, and then everything in between. So
and this is why you shop around, right? And the benefit of a broker, you would never put an applicant into a bank that has a 25-day pickup file time period. I mean, they want to move. Every week they're looking at properties and property prices are moving. The tension on timing and wanting everything yesterday, it's worse than waiting for an Uber, you know? So I think from that point of view, we've got to be really careful. You just got to understand that this is the environment that you're playing in the big surf. Yep.
And what I'm saying with the risk spectrum, Ben, if you are someone who has a house with lots of equity in it and you're about to buy, let's call it an investment property, and your LVR across the portfolio is really conservative, you may highlight may, you may be someone who can move up the risk spectrum.
Yep.
Right. Versus you're someone who's first time buyer, who's buying at 90%, and you are throwing everything you possibly can just to get in the market. You may not be someone who can jump up the risk spectrum.
Yep.
Right. So a buyer is not a buyer is not a buyer. There are different buyers in this marketplace. So that is why a couple of episodes ago we said finance is really important. It might have been last week. So we need to be establishing this, and you're not talking to your finance broker or your bank once. You're talking to them closely up to the pointy end, because these are the real tensions that are going on, right? So, and SMSF purchases, Ben. Gosh, how difficult is it just to be an SMSF purchase? Because it's difficult in a normal market, let alone a hot market with conditions and things that you need to satisfy lending and
so there's obviously less and less suppliers of SMSF lending. So we call them Smurfs because it's easier. So with a Smurf purchase, you normally need a longer settlement. So in some cases, that's helpful for the seller who may be looking to have time to do their own buying. But yeah, again, if this person wants a cash offer and a quick sale and get their cash so they can move on and even relocate to the regions or relocate interstate because of COVID, whatever's happening in terms of that program, just be mindful of that. We don't need to spend much time on it. That you need to get super ducks lined up for SMS because the legal stuff takes forever, the paperwork takes forever. So that's also something to consider if you're buying in a Smurf.
All right. Subject to finance is not an escape clause. It's not a way to crash a deal. You'll need to make some reasonable effort to secure finance. So don't dance with the devil with conditions where you think are escape clauses and they're not. The vendor solicitor can ask for evidence and proof that you've made reasonable efforts to try and get finance. It's not just a case of saying, can't get it. They're going to say, prove it. Right. So do not play Houdini or Russian roulette with conditions.
I'll give you a quick example of that, Bryce. So if you have a subject to finance clause in there and you're saying with, say, Commonwealth Bank, and then I don't want to buy it anymore. No, circumstances have changed. And you go, no, we didn't get finance. The solicitor says, show me the letter from CBA that says you didn't get finance. And wait a minute, I have a conditional approval over here. You're buying that property. So, and if you have a very simple subject to finance clause in there that doesn't name the lender, they're going to say, well, keep looking, keep getting that, like if you think you've paid overs. So it's just really important that the subject to finance, as Bryce said, is not an escape clause in your contract.
All right. Now, folks, here's a little tip for you. If the vendor is nervous about getting back in the market, take away their pain. Let them rent it back from you at settlement as a condition, which will give them some certainty, or give them a longer settlement. If you want to settle in 30 and you can give them 100, and that's going to get you over the line, and that's going to give them some certainty. Like, it's not always about price. So it's always about understanding the backstory of why they're selling as best you can, so that you can actually craft an offer that gives the vendor what they want. You might find the second highest offer is the best one. The second highest offer was the highest price, but didn't get the chocolates because it didn't satisfy some other things. So be creative.
Yeah, be creative, but also don't guess. Just ask the agent. Is the vendor interested in certain conditions, certain terms? Yeah, actually, in fact, they are. They're not moving interstate for 3 months, so a longer settlement would be more preferable to them. Okay, interesting.
The dialogue is outside of price. What else is important to them?
Correct. Perfect. Well said. All right, there we go. So there's all the conditions. Now, we've done other podcasts before when we deep dive into 5% versus 10% deposits and all of those other things. So go to the propertycouch.com.au and search in there for those episodes where you'll get that more detailed. This is about buying in a hot market. We're not doing the whole conditions and what to put in contracts. We're just sort of focusing in on how you win in a hot market.
Exactly. So what happens next? You got the offer in. Well, clearly you got to liaise with your professionals, liaise with the solicitor, liaise with your broker. If you've got conditions, make sure that you actually can satisfy those conditions.
Yeah.
And be aware, time is of the essence in some places. Satisfying the condition, just be aware that this is game on. Make sure you satisfy those conditions. They've got backup contracts. You might have Ben lurking around in the background telling the agent that he's a backup contract to the one that you just missed. So, like he told that story before. So clearly you need to work through that. We try wherever possible to be available when the valuer goes out. So get the valuer out early, get them out as early as you can in the process, and also our team wants to talk to them and remind them. And there's an art between that, because valuers are on to people who come up and give them free advice, Ben, when they come to the house. But it's certainly important in an environment where the comps are hard to keep up. And that's what that's what the valuer needs to use as comps. So if you can give them some intel around what's sold that isn't on public record, that's helpful. Obviously, on the day of settlement, you got to work out who's going to get the keys. Are you owner occupier? Yep. But if you're an investor, you get the property manager to go and pick them up for you and start getting cracking on.
Get started.
The tenanting that they may have been doing in advance. They may have been able to show people in advance.
Just a quick one there, Bryce, around different states and territories in terms of how a contract exchanges. And there are some gazumping laws in different states, certainly New South Wales. When I was buying back in the 2001 to 2000, gazumping was happening everywhere. So you need to make sure that those exchange of contracts happen. So if your offer has been verbally accepted to you, you absolutely need to move very quickly to get those contracts exchanged, where you've got the vendor's signature and your signature on the contract, because a contract can fall over. When we were talking about getting all of those valuations done and everything, you've got a conditional and then an unconditional contract when it comes to buying property. So make sure you're doing that work to get those exchanges happening.
That's a good point. In New South Wales, you can't have conditions. It's just swap the contracts over. It's unconditional. You might even have to waive cooling off the 66W form. So, New South Wales buyers are the toughest in the country. Like their system is, if you're in the thick of the big markets in Sydney, that's the big surf there.
They are well-oiled machines. The people that you need to talk to, they know what they're doing, and so just
professional buyers know what they're doing, right?
Correct. That's it.
You want to make sure that you know what you're doing. So that's around making sure that you're getting a chance to get a tenant in place. Quantity surveyor, Ben. We've had Bradley Beer on a couple of times. Circle back, go and do a search for Bradley Beer, listen to his podcast episodes. But clearly, you want to maximize cash flow, so you want to get prepared for that. Get a quantity surveyor's report for you to maximize the depreciation on the building. And then finally, insurance. So building insurance. If you're buying an strata scheme, make sure that there was already a building insurance in place. And of course, landlord's protection insurance, Ben, covers you.
All A, B, C, D, Bryce. Now we're in the defence. So, quantity surveyor, tax depreciation, that's all about cash flow. And now we're talking about defence, which is the last one. You're tidying up this purchase that you've just made in a hot market. So absolutely getting those insurances in place is a must.
It is. So there you go, folks. There's the offer, the conditions, and then following that through to settlement and beyond. But we talked about landlord's protection insurance there, Ben, but we've got some good news. We're actually going to deep dive into this particular topic because it underwent some scrutiny and some heat through COVID, didn't it?
That's right, Bryce. There's a moratorium that's been in place in a lot of states and territories, and those moratoriums are easing at the end of March. So it's really nice to be having a deep dive into those insurances and what happened during that time and how we're coming out the other side for both, the property owner, being the landlord, and also some of the benefits and rights of the tenant. So I'm looking forward to that chat.
Yeah, so stick around next week, folks. We are doing a deep dive into that with the CEO of a big player in the market around landlord's protection insurance. We're going to ask some questions to dive in, but I reckon here's my tip to you, folks. Next week is going to be a technical topic, but I reckon you should press in and make sure that you understand that landlord's protection insurance is important if you are a professional investor. So stick around for that next week. So, mate, there we go. Covered some ground in the last 3 weeks, Ben. I kind of write some notes and think that we go over the bullets. I think, oh, surely, we're going to get 20 or 30 minutes out of that. And then I look at the clock and our usual standard of length of time here. So, but hopefully that's helped, folks. For those of you that are playing in the property market right now, I wish you all the very best. I think if you circle back to Simon, can you help me out with the surname here, Ben? Always Kushtenmarker.
Kushtenmarker, yes. No, yes. Well done. That was perfect.
Yes, I did it right on the day too. So my recall, I'm happy with that. But how's that for a little self-congratulation? But if you go back and listen to his episode, that'll fill you with enormous confidence as to why this next decade is going to be a wonderful decade. So it's worth those people who are playing the long game to play in this hot market.
Go to Scott Keck as well. That one was
Scott Keck.
Yeah, yep. Those two were like, I don't know what you're talking about. It's going to be a monster year, monster decade. Keep moving forward. Well, he was right again.
Yeah. What about Jock? He's been doing it since 1967. So anyway, we probably could go through the whole catalogue here for 6 years since our birthday. But the point being is there is some reason for optimism to suggest that we're not buying for no bigger purpose whilst we're navigating, because it's easy to lose it, Ben, in this market. If you're in the thick of this market, particularly if you are trying to get in for the first time, at least if you're having a crack as an investor or trying to upgrade, you can retreat, lick your wounds, go home to your place. Whereas the poor firsties, they can't even get into that home and have that feeling. So there we go. Hopefully that served you, folks. Our job is to try and shine a light and give you as much information so that you can play the game of property as best that you can. Hey, my life hack this week comes from Ardit from our team, fellow Apple user, Ben. So for those who are not Apple users, you might groan at this point, but she showed me a little thing last week, which was exciting. So if you've got iCloud connected devices, Ben, so let's think my MacBook Pro, my iPad, my phone. If I am on my Mac and I go I get some text and I copy it, I can then go straight to my phone and tap on a note or an email or whatever and push paste. And what I copied on the Mac, I can paste on my other iCloud connected device. How good is that? Seriously.
That's helpful.
Mate, I wish I knew that a long time ago, to be honest.
Productivity hack, that one.
That's a little productivity hack. So, folks, if you've ever sat there and gone, how do I get this from my phone to my Mac or back, or from my iPad to my phone or whatever, Artie's just solved it.
Job done. And I'm sure Android will have something similar, but we'll have to shout out to our community and let them put it on our Facebook page in terms of whether they can do that. So I'd be interested to know whether the Google family has something along those lines.
Well, let's give Stig the floor, mate. We haven't done this for a little while. She's the Android girl.
Birthday. So surely she'll want to come on the show for the birthday.
So there you go, Ivis. Can Android do anything?
Can it?
Ivis?
All
right. Okay. There we go. She doesn't want to play. Okay. There we go. So we'll move on. So that's my life hack today. What's making property news, mate?
What's making property news, Bryce? So Westpac and Bill Evans, who I'm a huge fan of. I love Bill's work. He's one of the thought leaders in our country in terms of economic activity and what's going to be happening into the future in terms of his forecast. Well, let's just say the optimism has returned when it comes to the property forecasts. So dwelling forecast for Sydney in 2021, 10% for Sydney, and 2022, another 10%. So 20% over 2 years. Melbourne, 8% in 2021, 10% in 2022. Brisbane, 10% in 2021, 10% in 2022. And with the announcement maybe that they're getting the Olympics, there might be a little bit more hoo-ha about that. Perth, 12% this year, 8% next year. Adelaide, 10% this year, 8% next year. Hobart, 8 and 6. And so Australia, 10 and 10, double figures. So I thought there's been a lot of talk about, I've never seen conditions like this in the past before. So who else is going to make property news? It's going to be us, Bryce. I thought we would just go back and have a look at markets that were crazy, where there were huge queues, where the market was running. And that was in Sydney and Melbourne back in 2001 to 2003. Then Brisbane got into the party in 2004, 2005, where they saw some stellar growth as well. But I just want to reel off what happened in terms of Melbourne. So back in 2020, the median house price in Melbourne, are you ready for this? 183,500.
Wow, that was
Right.
expensive back then.
Back then, right? And from January to January, prices moved 12% into 2021. And then from 2021 to 2022, they moved, this is where it was moving and shaking, 20%.
Ooh.
Yeah. And then the following year after that, they moved another 18%. So overall, 60% in 3 years. Sydney, first year was 7.76, and the median house price in Sydney back then was 312,500 at the start of January 2020. Then we saw, so they went 7, then they went 14, and then they went 15 for a lazy 43% growth over a 3-year period. And they finished at a median house price of 415,000. Now, Bryce, we're looking at these forecasts of 10%, 8%, 12%, double digits, right? Here's what's happened in the last 28 days, right? So this is a 28-day rolling average for Sydney. They're already up 1.9%. Right. So Melbourne's already up 1.3%. Brisbane's already up. This is thanks to our good friends at CoreLogic, 1.2%. Adelaide's up 0.6%. Perth is up 2% in the last 28 days. So if you roll that sort of monthly result out there, you're sort of talking about slightly higher than 10%. So, I mean, just to give you an idea, Sydney year to date on a 12-month rolling is 2.5. Melbourne's negative 1.8. So they're playing catch up because of the lockdown. Brisbane's sitting at 4.7, Perth is sitting at 4.6, and Vegas sitting at a lazy 6.9 in 12 months. So I'm expecting that, you know, if those numbers continue, it may be a little bit higher than the 10% and 8% that are being forecast by our good friends at Westpac. Just might be, you know, sort of outperform numbers there. So that's what's making property news, Bros.
Yeah, assuming there's no more listings. So let's get back out on the streets and start dancing in the streets for more listings, Ben. And that'll
Sell
take
your
a
properties. Sell your properties, people. You don't need them. Sell your properties. We've got buyers. We've got buyers.
That's what will take a little bit of the heat out of it. So there you go, folks. Hopefully that's helped. Part 3, how to buy in a hot market. Hopefully that served you, Ben. Until next week.
Knowledge is empowering, Bryce, but only if you act on it. And, Bryce, happy birthday, mate.
Happy birthday to you too, mate. See you next week, folks.
Hey there, folks. Bryce Holdaway here. Before you go, if you're new to our community and only listened to maybe a handful of episodes, I thoroughly recommend that you go all the way back to episode number 1, where we unpack all of the foundations when it comes to property investing. Now, for those of you that might be a little bit time poor, I've got good news for you. We have a binge guide that you can download straight away, which summarizes the first 20 episodes where Ben and I unpack the foundational pillars of the A, B, C, D, and so much more. And you can get that straight away. If you go to thepropertycouch.com.au/TPC20, you can download it and consume it whenever you want. It's completely free and available now. And for those of you, just a quick reminder that nothing we've spoken about today constitutes financial advice. We recommend that you reach out to your licensed professional advisor so that you can look at your unique circumstances before acting on any information. Now don't forget, go to thepropertycouch.com.au/TPC20 and get your binge guide today.